Pause.
Sorry. This is to discuss where we're going today, the logistics of the webinar. Please mute your phone when you're listening to the webinar today. When you need to speak, you'll unmute it. Because we have a small audience of about 8 people, we'll have some significant interaction between our participants and OME today. And unmute it, as we said, when it's off, when you want to speak. And we'll monitor the chat box if you have any questions throughout the webinar, especially at times when we have a delay and a pause, and you'll be able to enter some questions in the chat box. Today, what we like to do is our objectives are to gain a deeper understanding for everyone of evaluation checklist items. Those items were created so that all our MEP directors would be able to have a one-pager back and forth of what the requirements are for the MEP evaluation report. And we're going to have some time to share some practices and see some examples of some evaluation checklist items so that all participants here will be able to go back and submit an evaluation report that meets MEP requirements and help you improve your programs. So, our agenda here today is we're going to have some activities before the evaluation. Oh, sorry, 1 second. We're going to discuss the requirements today for the evaluation, and this is the evaluation check segment here. Each one of these components are part of the evaluation checklist. And we're going to have to hold for 1 second here. Can we hold 1 second? Again, I'm sorry about that. We have 2 PowerPoints here available today. One PowerPoint was from last year, and I realized on that slide that we were hitting the last year's PowerPoint. In the PowerPoint, we have some examples that will show you of some activities and segments of the evaluation report that are exemplars. So now back to the one that we're going to use today. And we may have more participants than we have right here on this list, but I just want to confirm. Charlie, are you here from Indiana?
I'm here. Rachel's here as well.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel. And hi, Charlie. Kentucky. Judy, you on the line?
Yes, I had a little technical issues, but I'm here.
Well, they're not alone. All right. How about Savannah from Maryland? Savannah may not be on right now. I know Michigan's on the line.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Ed. This is Shireen and Michelle.
Michelle's there. Okay, great. Thank you, Shireen. And Lee, are you on from Minnesota?
Yes, we are here. Here with Noemi Trevino.
Hi, Noemi.
And probably Carrie from Meta is out there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
Okay. And how about Melissa?
Melissa's not here today, but we do have Zeta Ferris, Becky Nixon, Jose, and Hasmin.
I'll remember that, but thank you. I'm glad to hear you're here with us. And Oregon? Jonathan?
Greetings from rainy Oregon. Sorry, I was on mute.
Glad to have you, Jonathan. And I think I saw Mary on. Mary, you on from Vermont?
I am on. I am.
Great.
It's raining in Vermont, too.
We'll probably have some today. Now, is there anyone that I've missed in this webinar? Anybody on that we have not, haven't seen their name or we discussed now?
Carolina's here.
Oh, great. Thank Jennifer?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. All right. Well, now we all know who's here. These are our participants. We're going to go ahead on to the real objectives for the day. And those are what we discussed before, applying the evaluation checklist and accessing actually the toolkit. You're going to be able to submit NOME approved MEP evaluation. So that was the same as before. And we're going to go briefly into a rationale for our program evaluation. Of course, it's for compliance because we have to meet the requirements under the law and the statutes. But also, a big reason for evaluation is that we may be able to use the results so we can improve the effectiveness of our program and help our students attain high standards and raise the graduation rate so that they'll be able to have productive citizenship, further learning, and employment, like the MEP goal states. So it's used for regulation and the law and for compliance, but also for the improvement of our program so we meet our goal and that we'll be able to attain the GEPRAs, the Government Performance Results Act results, so that our students be able to reach standards and graduate from high school primarily. So, that said, it comes out of the statute for ESEA, No Child Left Behind, the federal regulation, and there are some citations that we have in our evaluation section, pages 96 through 107 of our non-regulatory guidance, and also page 63 in the SDP, because in the SDP there's a provision for coming up with the performance targets for the MEP in your state evaluation plan. Evaluation is part of the cycle that we've shown this slide at a few of our conferences. When you do come up with your CA, you've analyzed the needs of your population, you develop a plan for delivery, you implement the plan, and then after that's done, to find out what works, we use program evaluation, and then that again influences the cycle of the CNA, and then going into another SDP. It's all for the purpose of continuous improvement and improving program results. So, we've covered the agenda today, but one thing I'd like to discuss with you right now and have a little interaction is that we didn't receive any specific questions from participants for this webinar so far. So we don't have those yet. And I want to throw out these questions for you, first of all. Would you like to review the evaluation checklist, that one-pager that we provided last year? I'd like to throw that out there and see if participants would like to do that. We'd like to know what questions you may have about your upcoming evaluations that we could answer at this webinar. And just generally, how can we use this webinar to meet your needs? So I'd like you to consider those questions and take a minute. If you can come up with a response to any of these three, can you tell us your response either verbally over the microphone, or I'm sorry, your telephone. You could put them inside the chat box addressed to everyone, and we'll take that down. So for the next minute or two, I'd like you to just consider these questions about, would you like to look at the checklist and tell us what questions you may have and how we can meet your needs. So I'd like to open it up and we'll see if we have any responses. Identify yourself first and then go ahead and tell us what your question is. Mary?
Hi. So first of all, I would like to review the checklist. And second of all, it's my ever-present needs. I think it's going to be tough to do this evaluation piece with very large states and very small states, because I think the evaluations are pretty different in those. At least the resources we have to put forward for those evaluations are pretty different, and scale-wise, I think it's very different.
Okay. Sarah, you're bringing up the information about the small states, and we're going to have that webinar in June. So we could discuss some of that here, but mostly we're going to leave most of that content for June.
Yeah.
We talk about some of those differences.
I getcha.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? We have one from Shireen that would like to see the checklist as well. And Jennifer?
I'd like to do the checklist review.
It's all good.
Okay. So we're getting a quorum on that. Okay. Good. Thank you. how questions that the group may have that they'd like for OME to answer. We have some from last year that we could show. If you'd like us to show the questions that the group from last year asked us, we're going to be able to do that if you'd like. If you have other ones for today, we'd like to hear them.
Indy, we'd like to know kind of what are some of the exemplary evaluations that you've received in the past. What are some of the things that were included? What were some of the specifics to help kind of guide us to push our thinking as well?
How about we show some of those from last year? We have a few slides in that presentation that I was formerly on. Would that be okay?
That works fine. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that. So we'll do some exemplars. All right. Jonathan, we don't have any LEA ones to show you, samples of LEA evaluations, but we could discuss that at another time. I don't have any today, though. Any questions? Would it be valuable for us to go over questions that directors had for us last year?
Sure.
All right.
And this is Lee, and maybe a follow-up to the other question from Indiana, but just wondering if you have a specific rubric you're using when you're reviewing state mission plans that you share or with us?
Absolutely. I think we're going to do that. It seems like a real need is to review that checklist. Maybe instead of going through the PowerPoint and getting to the checklist, let's go ahead and start with a checklist. So we're going to have to bring down our PowerPoint and go over here to this checklist. I did send this to everyone. Mary, you may not have received this because I didn't get a... Yeah, I did have a confirmation from you. Do you have that, Mary?
I do not.
Okay. Mary, I'm going to send this. This is available on our results website, but I'll send this over to you after the webinar, okay?
I visit the results website, so I can check. Is it in the toolkit or is it in a different place?
I'll have to find it.
I think it is, Mary. I think if you go to the left-hand side with the toolkits and evaluation, it's somewhere on that page.
Okay.
I just can't remember
I think I
the
could probably
order.
find.
Yeah, I just can't remember the order which the documents are placed.
Mary,
Okay.
it's no problem. If you can't find it, let me know. We'll send an email over to you, okay?
No problem.
Okay. So this is a two-pager that we developed last year with Rachel and Rachel Crawford, Lisa Gillette provided a lot of input into this. And we developed this checklist it's somewhat chronological. We came up with 4 different pieces of it that are requirements. And they are the activities that happen before the evaluation. You have the plan, the evaluation plan that's part of the SDP, then the report, and then some additional expectations. So those are the kind of 4 areas, and we'll hit the activities before the evaluation first. And if you can go down just a little bit more, Harold, thanks. Everything that you see in bold is a requirement, okay? So in this part of the two-pager, the activities before the evaluation, you can see that there are 4 bullets that are bolded, and then the other 2, the last 2, are ones that are best practices but are not requirements for the evaluation report. And I'll start with the very first one, because the very first one is typically missing in a lot of evaluation reports. And actually, it's probably about the easiest of the tasks to do, and we're just going to try to clarify what it should look like. So the first bullet states that we need performance results data on the state performance targets related to performance goals 1 and 5 of NCLB. And so what that means is that there are performance targets that your state has set for students on the statewide assessments. And that relates to performance goal 1. Performance goal 5 is another one that has to do with graduation. But performance goal 1, you're expected to provide results for migrant students broken into other migrant and PFS students, as well as non-migrant students, and the performance targets in reading, language arts, and mathematics. Now, with many of the states now have flexibility requests that have been approved. And they're no longer called performance targets, but they're called AMOs, annual measurable objectives. So with whatever term you have and whether you're a state that has received that approval or has not, you're to report on these different on the different subgroups for that. So that really encompasses a lot of the first bullet as well as the second bullet. Now we're going to show in a PowerPoint of last year, I can show Charlie, I know that this is one thing that you asked about, some exemplars. We do have some examples of what that would look like, and actually maybe we could do that. We could toggle back and forth if it doesn't bother you too much. If we want to see what that would look like, we're going to go ahead to that second PowerPoint. Harold's going to help me, and he's going to bring us to slide number, I'm thinking it's in the 20s. Harold, it might be slow going through there. And we're going to give us a second. We're going to find this this example so you can see it. Let's scroll down. There we go. Go to. It's actually not going to be implementation results. Go ahead. Here we go. Okay, 28. Okay. Here's an example of what it may look like if you're a state that has, well, whether you're in a flexibility request state or not. If you have, you can notice the purple is the target or the AMO for various grade levels. And what we're assuming here with this slide, everyone, is that this is a rather large state where you're reporting on each of the grade levels. You may have a small state, like take for example Mary in Vermont. She has a limited amount of students in the program. And what you may see is really instead of a 3rd and 4th and 5th grade grouping, you could see a 3rd through 5th grade grouping, which would represent elementary, or you may even see a 3 through high school grouping because so many students, there's so many, or I should say, so few students in a state like that. So if you're in a large state, it looks like this where it's being broken down by PFS, non-PFS performance, non-migrant performance, and then the target. But it really depends upon the number of students that you have in your in terms of how you're going to display that data. Actually, I think we have an example on the next slide where...
Can I ask a question on that? This is Mary.
Sure, Mary.
On that pre-slide, you have target there. Is that the state's target or your MEP program's target?
That's a good question. Because if you were part of, if you do not have a flexibility request, you have a target for all populations. But with a flexibility request, it actually is differentiated according to subgroups and LEAs and sometimes as down to the school level. So it will depend upon if you're a flexibility request, it should be for the migrant population. And if you do not have a flexibility request, it'll be based upon the target for the entire group. And actually now, if you have one, the target's going to be 100% for a year here on out. Because in NCLB, it was to be 100% by 2013-14. Okay, so if you want to find information out, Mary, for your state, it'd be in your state.
Oh, I know it, Ed. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
We're a non-flex state, so we're 100%.
Okay then. But if you are, you'll find it in your state's flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Now that's an example, but the next one shows, suppose you want to take a grade level, or you could take a group of grade levels, or you could take, if you're a small state, it could be your entire population. Mary, you might have 60 to 100 kids, and you might have break it down over the years and say, all right, here's our performance and our target and our comparison data for 2010, 2011, 2012. Show it on a line graph as well. But really, this is the overall sort of big picture in terms of how the migrant PFS students are doing on their state assessments in comparison to other migrant, as well as the overall population and the target. Does anyone have any questions about this particular piece of the evaluation report showing the performance results data? Any questions at all? Harold, bring us back to the checklist then, if you can.
Hey, John, thanks for utilizing the chat. If you will send it to everyone, somebody might be able to respond to your question and share their resources with you.
So, we have looked at the first bullet, and then the second bullet is one where the MEP collects results on school readiness and other needs. And honestly, we don't have a whole lot of states that selected school readiness and other needs. Some have, but I haven't seen too many. So that second bullet may or may not apply much to you. Now the third bullet is another one that increasingly states are getting, are improving their performance on in relating MPO data. Because when you think about it, the data that you provide in the evaluation report, the performance results data is broken out into two different pieces. One piece is the performance indicator results. Your results are the statewide assessments. The second piece are the measurable program objectives, and what your student performance is those measurable program objectives that you've designed in your program. So these assessments or performances, whatever the students, however they're demonstrating their proficiency or mastery, is going to be in relation to the objectives that you set out in the program. So for example, if in reading language arts and I'll just pick fluency or comprehension at a particular grade level are the big emphases of your program, then you have some results that deal with comprehension and fluency. Or if it's algebra or a particular of math. So it's going to be specific to the objectives for your program. And these are to be disaggregated by PFS and non-PFS. The time when you really don't disaggregate between PFS and non-PFS is if you have an extremely small state and the overall student count is so low that it does not assist you in making decisions for students. But in general, we disaggregate for those two populations within the microgram. And the fourth bullet is the state collects performance results data for GEFR measures. And everyone does that because the student scores are reported within EdFacts currently. And so that's how you report those. Not exactly through the report, but you do report them through the CSPR. And those are the major pieces of the activities that happen before the evaluation. The last two deal with how the states are working with their MEPs in evaluation, gathering data from them, informing them of the necessity to evaluate locally, and the types of data that should be used in those evaluations. So we could toggle back because we looked at performance results data for performance indicators, but we didn't look at NPOs. And I'm thinking it probably would be a good idea to look at NPOs and see what that looks like. Hal, could you take us back to that to the PowerPoint from last year? And I believe we're going to find it on the following pages after 28. It's going to be 32 or 33. 34. Here's an example. I think this is from, it's obviously from Iowa. I was going to say, I think it's from Iowa. Jerry provided this in her evaluation. And we looked at some of the MPOs that she provided. And also, with a measurable program objective, I put that little dialog box up there, think smart. That when you develop these, think about how these objectives should be very specific. You should be looking at a very specific area that you're tackling in reading, language arts, or math, or other areas in parental involvement and readiness. Think about that it's going to be measurable and measurable within the time period of the year. That's realistic and that it can be done on a timely basis. So these you can see they're very specific. The objectives were, for example, the first one, 80% of the students are enrolled and will demonstrate gains between a pre and a post assessment, and then 81% made the gains. Some states have put in there specific gains they want to see, and they might have specific assessments. Another example here, let's take 1C. 75% of the educators will report on a survey that these strategies or this PD has helped them in delivering high-quality instruction. And then the results are located there as well. So this is one example of MPOs, how they're written, and then the results from the MPO. I think there's even a few more on the next page. Next slide, rather. And here another one where we want to enroll a certain percentage of preschoolers. And that one wasn't met, but they discovered how many had enrolled. So it's very specific. It happens with a time period, and they're related. All these POs are related to the identified needs, the CNA, and then the plan, the service delivery plan.
And Deanna, I have a question.
Sure.
When it comes to the MPOs and the specifics of them, does OME ever look at those and judge them based upon some sort of rigor rubric? Oh, this goal is not rigorous enough, or this is not stretching far enough.
Charlie, I wouldn't say that we use a rubric that determines the quality of them, of the MPOs, but we do measure the MPOs against the identified needs in the CNA, and then in the SDP that's located there too. We don't really use a rubric to determine if your MPOs are strong enough. We look for if they're measurable and if they're related to the CNA and SDP.
Okay, so for example, on that last slide, Iowa, I think their first goal, it says make gains, but does not define gains. So gains could be 1%, it could be 1 point, so you're not looking at those types of things?
Well, we do look at them. A best practice really is defining what those gains would be.
Right.
And that's what we really advocate for.
Okay.
That said, at this point, we have not, returned an evaluation and said change it from make gains to a certain gain. We haven't done that much in terms of that expectation.
Okay.
So we want it to be measurable, but and we advocate for you to set specific gains, yes, but we don't. Okay. We're not going to send it back to you if you don't list that there.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead back, Harold, and we'll go ahead to that checklist one more time. I think we have activities before the evaluation, and now we're going to go to the next piece, the evaluation plan. Really brief. This is the plan that sits within the service delivery plan. Every evaluation plan should be detailed enough so that we'll be able to understand how you're going to tackle the evaluation plan, what activities you're going to measure, and how you intend to measure it within the SDP. So that should be contained within the SDP, which leads to the major piece here, the written evaluation report. And these bullets are really this is the meat of the checklist, because these are the requirements that we're going to look for in your report. So in the first bullet, the state MEP documents in the written report, that's obvious. This one is that we measure implementation results that demonstrate the level of fidelity that you implement a summer intersession or a regular year program. So what we look for here is that because when you want to evaluate a program, first of all, there has to be some sort of level of fidelity to make a decision on it. If you didn't implement the program well, you really can't tell if the program worked because it wasn't implemented well. So our responsibility is to determine the fidelity to which your reading program or math program or bus service or whatever it is that you're going to be measuring, whether it was implemented the way that you have it designed in your SDP. That's the implementation results. Now, there's been a great deal of variation, I think, in the reports that we've reviewed. The last ones coming through had fairly good, and some were very strong in terms of implementation, because the directors used a variety of practices in terms of trying out that level of fidelity. They used not just surveys of students and of teachers and of the parents, but also they had direct observations going on, finding out if the adequate amount of time was devoted to the interventions, if the interventions were carried out the way they were explained in the SDP, and most, there are a lot of direct observations by some of the states that have submitted these. So, a variety of ways you can determine that level of fidelity, and those are the implementation results. The fit is what we discussed in the activities that happen before you do the report, and these are the performance results data in comparing migrant students on the state's performance targets. So those are the performance indicator results that you provide those, and you put them in the evaluation report. Also, it's the MPO performance results, and they're in the report as well. Now, based upon those three different results, right, the implementation, and then the performance indicator and the MPO results, then you can have a good idea about what is working, what you need to replicate that's really working in your state, what needs to be changed, or what needs to be dropped if it's not making a difference in the lives of your students or in their academic achievement. So the section is about how you put those three different results and draw out some recommendations and some conclusions so you can now make some changes in the next year, or a set of years, whether it be 1 to 2 or 3 years. And you provide that full evaluation report every 2 to 3 years. And these are the main components of what should be in that report. And I always look at it in terms of just like 4, really. When you think of your performance results, they're the two biggest. The statewide assessments and your MPOs, how your students did on after they received some services, or whether those services made a difference. And then looking at your implementation results, and if the programs were delivered with fidelity, they make a difference. Are kids learning? And are they achieving at higher standards? And then based on that data, what do you do next? Do you continue? Do you modify? Do you drop? So, like to stop there, and do you have any questions about those? That's really the meat of the evaluation report right there, those 4 different pieces.
Edward?
Yeah.
I noticed that it says every 2 to 3 years. I thought it was every 3 years because you're doing your CNA 1 year, you're doing your SDP in the second year, and you're doing the evaluation the third year. Are there times that you want it every 2 years?
No, I think we pulled this language out of the non-regulatory guidance. I'll have to check that, Jonathan. But it does make sense to do it every 3 years because of what you just said, because it takes a while to study the data, develop the CNA, and then do the SDP, and then to evaluate. But years, we really recommend, and it'll come up here in the checklist, so the annual check-in with the evaluation. Not always do the implementation part, but to see what your results are every year, so that you may want to modify your plan, especially if you see big increases or decreases or whatever you see there. They have an annual way of progress monitoring your program. There's 3, Jonathan, we recommend.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Sure. Anyone else on this piece? Okay. Well, let's head down to the last part of the checklist, the additional expectations, and that's what we just discussed, the annual performance results evaluation. Just gather the data for language arts and math for your population and for your MPOs on an annual basis. Not always the implementation results, but the performance results. And then upon the results, the full evaluation, that you can describe those specific changes to the SDP and services based on your both sets of results. There are some other ones there about how the local MEPs, how the state may, interact with local MEPs and conduct evaluation reports. But what we're considering for our evaluation report here at OME are the ones that are bolded. So, that's the checklist. Feedback. Questions? Silence. No questions at all? Okay. We'll get back then to the first PowerPoint. There we go. And we have hit some of the agenda. So let's go ahead to the next page. And I think we just did the first agenda, number 1, discussing those checklist items. I think I heard from a few of you that you wanted to look at some questions that directors had last year. So we could take a look at that, and then we might be able to have some discussion here today about any questions you may have based on just interaction with these materials, and try to answer your questions as you go ahead and prepare your evaluation. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next one. We've gone through the checklist. And we'll continue and go through to, why do we just see the slide? 12 or 13? Yeah, 12. 12. One more. Okay, so these are some of the questions that we received in the past. Hopefully these will guide you as you're putting together your evaluation. First bullet you can see there is, what year's data do I actually use for this? And we always advocate for the most recent. There's no sense in sending us old data or yourself, because it won't help you in the evaluation of the program. So use the most recent data. And then, this question, do I use the performance targets in NCLB or the AMOs? And what we did this year is try to break this up, and we discussed this earlier. If you have a state like Mary was talking, Vermont, if you still have NCLB and no flexibility request, it's a real simple thing for you to do. It's always 100% then into the future until there's reauthorization of ESEA. So if you're state with no request, there you have it. For those states who have a request, I've seen many states with option A where they have this process of tailoring the performance target, or AMO, based on the migrant population, setting them toward a goal of reducing it by half, and then having these equal increments within 6 years, and using 10-11 data as the starting point of its AMOs. So that's really straightforward for states who choose option A. B, I have not seen one yet, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's because the end result is 100% in 1920. I think I've seen maybe one, but it's either 0 or 1 that I've seen for option B. But option C is another one that we've seen a number of, another method that's educationally sound in developing these targets or AMOs for A schools and subgroups, and using, again, 2-10-11 as the school year for the starting point. That was one question that came out last year, and we've developed language around that. We respond to in our letters, our monitoring response letters. The questions are there. If there's a big difference in the proportion of PFS and non-PFS students, do we still do a comparison? And we advocate for always, basically doing this comparison of PFS to non-PFS, unless you get a really, really small number of one of these two subpopulations. With a real small number, certainly less than 30, then it's not really worth the comparison at your state level. And so, if you have any question about that, about the comparisons, or when you should do disaggregation, if you have a small state, please do give me a call. We can discuss it. These are things usually work out on a one-to-one basis. And should we use 12-13 as a baseline and conduct comparisons annually? Was another question that we had. And we responded, use the latest, and it depends upon your state how many years you include in your analysis, but always include your most recent data. Here's a great one we had last year, because a lot of states have just summer-only programs. They end up with just a few students taking those statewide assessments. So they may have, less than 100. Actually, Charlie in Indiana is a great example for this, where he had very few students who are in the state taking the statewide assessments, and then having that data drive the entire program doesn't quite make as much sense. So what do you do when you have a summer state, and how do you measure the progress? And we suggested these types of things, using, if you want, a pretest or some kind of standards-based assessment data to guide the instruction. Could come out of the previous year, could even come out of the year from another state, because many of you receive students from other states. Getting that data and using that to guide your instruction and coordinating with those sending states. Those are effective practices reported to us. And looking for interventions in common gap areas for students, and then focusing. If there's a small amount of time, focusing on a limited amount of standards, and using an assessment aligned to that, to the content of those standards. So this was I thought, a very relevant question, because many of you have students for just a short amount of time in the summer. How to make the biggest difference in that summer program is really focusing those interventions and measuring them, and let be your major measurement and performance results for your program. Let's see, the next one we have. What if my MEP results, which I assume is going to be the statewide assessment results, and then the NDOs don't correlate what's going on? I'm not sure. Actually, I shouldn't guess at what that question is, because it could be interpreted in several ways. But our response last year was that if the results, in other words, if the results from your services are that the students are not learning well and achieving at higher levels when they're given an intervention in an academic area, and those results don't impact their results in the statewide assessments, then think about what you need to do about what, if that service is not effective, how could you improve it? How could you develop and deploy another service that could help students to get there? So that we responded to this question. It's a good one because sometimes we're going to find out that the results that we get from our assessments and related to our MPOs, they may not tell us the information we want. They may tell us that our students did not get the results we wanted. But based on that, no matter what, it's good information, so that we can decide to select a better program or select a better way to deliver instruction. Another question about evaluation over the different, whether we had a regular year or a summer intersession. If you have both programs, should they be evaluated separately? And our answer is yes, they should be evaluated separately. They're different services and times very different students as well. Okay, another one related to outcome data. This state wanted to place in the report should include state assessment and local assessment and surveys. And our response was that all of these different types of data have a place in it, but we just have to figure out where they belong, implementation or performance results. And we try to differentiate that. The three different types that we talked about earlier. The state assessment data are the performance indicator results. The local assessment data and surveys are the MPOs, relate to the MPOs and student learning and the migrant education program. And then the surveys are typically used along with other types of instruments in measuring the implementation. And so those were the questions that we had last year. I'll give you a few minutes now to think about. You've seen some of those questions. You've seen the checklist today. You know where you are in making progress toward your evaluation. You're somewhere along on the continuum. Or, it's too bad Savetta's not here. Savetta, I just received her evaluation, so you may be even finished. But you're somewhere in this process, and what I'd like to do is to pause this webinar for just a couple minutes and have you think about what questions that you may have for us or for your colleagues on the webinar phone line, that we can answer any questions you may have about evaluation in general or your state specifically. So we're going to pause this for a couple minutes. If you'd like to, you can put your question in the chat box, or you can just write it down and we can discuss it when we get back to the webinar. So right now it's about 2:51. We're going to take some notes on what you send to us in the chat box, and we'll get back on the line at 2:53 and answer your questions and begin a discussion on questions you may have. Thank you. Buddy, we're back online, and we have a couple, well actually there's one comment from Jonathan and then a question from Jonathan, and everybody saw it because Jonathan sent it to the group. And for the program, I guess, it seems that the pre and post works most effective in that summer intersession than the regular year teacher and interventions, etc. And Jonathan asks, has OME developed a template that can be filled with information requirements that you need? We haven't, Jonathan, but we've got that 2-page, or I should say 1-page back and front checklist, where if you look at the evaluation report section, you can meet those requirements, then it's going to be a compliant report. And please don't hesitate to call us or send a draft or or contact us, especially, contact me if you have any questions about that evaluation report. And so with that, those were the written question and statement. Do we have any questions from the participants that you've thought about in your evaluation report you'd like to throw out to the group and that we may all contribute to? No questions at all? Nothing? Are we there? Anyone online?
Yeah, we're here.
Good.
We're
Okay, that's
online.
great.
We're with you, Ed.
Okay. I was getting a little worried there.
You know, we participated in previous webinars too, so I think we comprehend the process.
Okay, Shireen, thank you. I was a little worried there. I saw nothing but green lights, but I didn't understand why I didn't hear anything.
Right. We put ourselves on mute, so.
Okay, that's true. Well, thank you. All right, so if there's no questions, we'll go ahead on to the very last piece of this webinar. We do have a toolkit that's available
Yeah.
at our website. And this was created, to support states in the cycle, the continuous improvement cycle, and to give you some ideas on how you can create an evaluation report that meets requirements and helps you give you ideas for improvements for your program. And it's located on our results website. And I'm not going to click on that now because you'll receive this. Actually, you already have received this PowerPoint. If you click on that website, and many of you have already, of course, been there, you can find the toolkit there. The toolkit has some great suggestions. On the next page, next slide, it'll help you with all of these pieces: how to size the findings, how to plan it, collect the evaluation data, and analysis, and communicate findings. The toolkit is a fantastic resource. What I definitely advocate that if you're at the beginning of the process, to access that toolkit and use it as a resource in developing your evaluation plan and your report. And so that's a recommendation from us. We have been receiving a number of evaluation reports of late. We've been able to respond as soon as we can. We have about 4 different states that we need to provide a response to right now. But I think after those 4, we should be caught up in our responses. So when you send it in, if you have an evaluation report that you're going to send in, whether it be this year or whenever you send it in, go ahead. You could send it to myself at that email address on the last page of this PowerPoint, and also your program officer. And we'll get to reviewing that evaluation report as soon as possible, so that we can work together to make sure it's compliant and it gives you the right data to make improvements to your program. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. I will look into, if you didn't have many questions today, if you have any in the future, please do give me a call, email or call me, and we can discuss any of the developments in your evaluation plan or your evaluation report, so that you can be on track and get a compliant report in. All right? So thank you for my colleagues and I, from Celeste and Harold, and the staff. Thank you for participating. And for those of you who have small states and are going to look more into that N size, especially Mary, that we'll be working with you in June at that webinar and talking about how we will differentiate when it comes to N size and what those small state evaluations, how they'll differ from the normal evaluation. So with that, thank you, everyone, and you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Thanks.